You might not know this about me, but I've been recognized by the Wisconsin Milk Marketing Board as a cheese-cyclopedia. Basically, when I worked for a grocery store, one of my jobs was to manage the cheese shop. I had to learn about all different kinds of cheeses, how to cut them, how to serve them, how to pair them with different foods and different drinks. Now, if you visited me at the store, I would have been surrounded by literally 100 different kinds of cheese, and I was in charge of all of them. The fancy title for this is a fromagère, but the title I had was cheese steward. I didn't own all the cheeses, and I got paid the same amount no matter how much cheese was sold. Still, I was given the authority by the grocery store to manage this entire area, and I still have some pretty strong opinions about cheese. Now, it's probably not cheese for you, but we are all a steward of something. Maybe it's the house we think we own, but really is on loan from the bank. Maybe it's the amount of time we have to get a project completed at home. We are all a steward of something. Now, what exactly is a steward? A steward manages something for someone else under their authority. One great example of stewardship is babysitting someone's kid. Just because we have some influence and authority over the kid over a period of time doesn't make the kid ours, thank heavens. No, we've just been asked to look over, to manage, to guide, to take care of someone who is really under someone else's authority, mainly their parents or their guardian. This applies to everything in our lives. See, Jesus views us as stewards of everything we call ours. We're not the owner, He is. And there's a great story in the book of Luke that can help us grasp that concept. Jesus told this story to His disciples. There was a certain rich man who had a manager handling his affairs. One day, a report came that the manager was wasting his employer's money. Now, this guy was a steward, a money manager, and he was squandering his boss's money. So the steward was panicking, right? He didn't know what to do, but then he got an idea. He put the plan into action right away. So he invited each person who owed money to his employer to come and discuss the situation. He asked the first one, "How much do you owe him?" And the man replied, "I owe him 800 gallons of olive oil." So the manager told him, "Take the bill and quickly change it to 400 gallons. And then he did it again. He negotiated a bill of 1,000 bushels of wheat down to 800. Now, what happens next is pretty incredible. The boss, instead of screaming or yelling at the steward, admired him. I mean, can you believe that? What's Jesus trying to say? Be dishonest with your boss's money and you'll get a commendation or something? That's not the takeaway, but that's why this parable is a little confusing for us today. And the result is shocking. See, we know that the steward should be arrested or condemned, but Jesus doesn't seem to do that. So let's unpack the parable a little bit so we can understand. Remember, the steward was going to be fired. His entire job was dedicated to controlling the finances, and since he gets fired, he wouldn't be trusted in that line of work again. So he took drastic action and gives deep discounts to the people who owed them. And at the time, 800 gallons of olive oil would have been equivalent to 3 years' salary. He cut it in half. Can you imagine someone cutting your mortgage in half in a phone call? I mean, you wouldn't believe it. We're thrilled when we get a buy one, get one deal at Walmart. I mean, and this is why it's important. Culturally, the debtors who got the savings would be obligated to return the favor to the steward. Actually, in the story Jesus told, the steward even says this, I know how to ensure that I'll have plenty of friends who will give me a home when I am fired. Basically, because the steward had given this type of deep discount, these men would have expected to return him the favor. The steward had set himself up for life. And Jesus says the rich man admired this dishonest manager. Why? Well, the law of the time meant charging interest wasn't allowed, so often when money was loaned, it showed an additional owed amount in goods and services or commodities like oil and wheat. So it would appear the law was being followed, but it wasn't. It was likely the estate owner was working around the law and then couldn't do a whole lot about the money manager's actions in the end. This would have been commonplace at the time. And it was really a good example for those listening. And what was Jesus trying to accomplish by telling the story? Well, He tells us His point. Here's the lesson. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then, when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you to an eternal home. If you're faithful in the little things, you'll be faithful in large things. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. And if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? And if you are not faithful with other people's things, why should you be trusted with the things of your own? Wow. If you can't be trusted with the little things, why should you be trusted with the big things? Jesus reminded his disciples, and he's reminding us today, that we are stewards, not owners. Everything is God's, and we're called to be trustworthy with what he has given us. What does it matter if we're stewards, not the owner? Well, first, the riches of today are temporary. Have you heard of the phrase, you can't take it with you? Having a lot of money at the end of your life doesn't mean much. However, if you're a good steward of what God has given you and are faithful to what God wants us to do as you use his money, we find true riches in heaven. So ask yourself, would you rather be materially rich today or spiritually rich in heaven? Now, second, Jesus reminds us that if you show faithfulness in the small things, you'll be entrusted with more. We're stewards of what God has given. He's the owner, and how we handle material possessions reflects spiritual integrity, and in turn shows we're ready for more spiritual responsibility. So as stewards, we're called to manage wisely. And third, and this is how Jesus ends the parable, you can't serve both God and money. No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. So which one do you serve? Can God trust you with his money? See, this parable is a great reminder of what God calls us to do and who he calls us to be. We're the stewards, he's the owner, and he calls us to put our money where our mouth is.